Hello, myself Sunil Ramakrishna. Here, basically, we are discussing about one topic that is currencies and its dependencies. And in this dependency, basically, we are discussing about one topic that is the ideas are equal to global warming. In this, basically, we are talking about the solution. Basically, the solution, basically, the 12th number solution which is ongoing, and that solution is basically connected with the cities, basically, creation. In this, basically, we are talking about one topic that is the 20 percentage global warming error that is going to 100% going to convert to the 40 percentage if this error basically is not getting solved. That is 100% basically, I am telling you, mark my words, this is 100% going to convert to global warming error. That is the big error basically. For that, basically, lots of people says that basically we have kept the temperature, no? Basically that is the glacier basically. See, basically, if glacier basically is giving some effect, basically lots of people says that basically if you have kept the temperature condition basically, then basically it's not going to connect basically. Few people says that, do you know, basically sometime basically the alarm you kept, you basically keep the alarm, sometime it doesn't work basically. Why basically that is basically, what is the reason behind that basically? Then one of the person told that basically uh, whole world basically, for example, there are basically around this basic experience basically many less people might be having. For example, I will take one example. For example, in this world basically there are around 100 crore mobile, assume basically, and that tapman basically is controlled by one of the software company basically, assume that that is basically one computer. So that basically is not the issue, but that also basically connecting, going to connect to the issue also. So here basically the thing is that the mobile basically is connected to the computer basically. That one or two computer basically might be there, or basically might be some like Amazon server also basically might be there. Amazon server basically is in thousands basically, so it might be there, that number also basically. Sometime basically the conflict basically happens in the computer basically. Sometime basically the stored data basically that not get triggered basically. Why basically that is the error basically. That basically is the tapman error, that is the temperature error basically. Whenever basically the education basically tapman is going to increase, that time basically the, that is the 80 percentage education basically error is there. So in this 80 percentage error basically, the 80 percentage error basically will not get triggered sometime basically. That might be some error basically, that basically might be connected with satellite, or basically it might be connected with some energy error, or basically it might be connected with some ideas basically. So it might possible that basically that trigger basically will not get fire also basically one day due to some error basically. Same way with the buildings basically are getting increased. That is the, here basically we are taking education error basically. So we will take education only buildings basically. The education created buildings, that is for example MBA group basically, energy group created 1 lakh buildings. MBBS doctors education basically energy created 1 lakh buildings. Software companies energy basically created 1 lakh building. Like this basically MTech, BTech, MCA, this all basically education, educated people basically, MCom, BCom, economics professor, these that basically each and every educated people basically education energy basically created around 20 lakh basically, 30 lakh basically building basically created basically. So it might possible that basically sometime will trigger basically will not get fire. Sometime basically, not basically every time basically, but sometime basically it might possible that the trigger will not get fire. That time basically what is we are going to do? It might possible that the nuclear power company basically created the glacier. That time basically due to some conflict basically in the sea water basically. Reason, sea water is also basically getting experimented every time basically. Sea water is also basically getting experimented every time basically. Reason behind is, one time basically sea water was gold, one time sea water was diamond, one time sea water was lava, one time entire sea water I am talking about, entire sea water was one time lava also basically. One time sea water was basically was connected with entire human souls, like this also basically. One time the sea water was basically. So due to that basically it might possible that the some group basically who is handling the sea water, they might change the data of the seawater. Due to that data change, basically the glacier will get 100% will get effect, and might possible that basically the glacier data basically trigger is not going to happen. So that glacier data basically, that is the trigger basically which is kept, that will 100% will not get tracked basically. Lots of people says that we visit the trigger, we visit the glacier data also basically, we visit the glacier area also basically through helicopters, through plane basically. Sometime basically we visits the through boat, through ships also basically we visit. But that time basically we never got this type of problem basically. That basically, then for that basically, for we basically have sent a few data basically. For example, one person is basically moving near that glacier basically, he will feel hot in from the body basically. He will basically get hot energy basically instead of getting cold energy basically. That basically is the trigger basically. That also basically we checks basically. Up to that level basically we checks basically. And we basically that particular person human body, that person basically which has went to that area basically, that data is basically getting logged in the one of the computer basically. When he is going to get the hot energy basically inside the body, his data is basically going to connect to the computer, and that basically is going to generate the log file, that is hot energy has generated. So like this basically we have kept the trigger also basically. Like this basically lots of human clones basically also created by our group basically. Like this we have created lots of things basically. But that is created no, basically. That is created by human only basically. That time basically might possible that some conflict basically might happen, and that time basically the things basically might have created. But every time basically that possibility is not there basically. So you can't basically, here basically glacier also basically sometime fails, sometime basically, but 99% basically that works. But one time you can't say no basically. One time basically, that one time 1% only basically might create problem in the world basically. It might possible suddenly basically few cities basically will get disappear from the world basically. That basically very rare happens basically. But few people says that basically we keep the temperature of the sea water also basically. For example, the people who are staying near the Mumbai city, they are basically watching the sea water level basically. For example, they basically keeps the, they basically how basically they keeps that data basically, that is it. For example, one day basically that sea water has raised to this level, so next day also basically it will raise. So like this basically they do the assumption basically that one day it has raised here, so one next day basically it's going to raise there only basically. So but that is the assumption basically. You can't say 100% basically. That is the basically assumption, the data science project basically you might have created, and from that data basically you are telling that basically the water is going to reach up to this level only basically. That is assumption basically. But that will assumption basically might create problem in future basically. So you can't assume anything basically. You can't assume basically anything basically. One of the person told that basically, यार मैंने कल छुट्टी लिया है, I have taken one holiday, the my partner basically will 100% going to come na basically. So that person basically has not asked his partner basically. But that time basically both basically had taken the holiday. In this basically one of the owner basically of the partner basically told that basically two people we have kept in one software basically, both basically are absent basically. Do one thing, fire one person basically. So like this basically the fired trigger exhibited. So like this basically things happen basically. So you can't assume in the real life also basically that when basically the water will get raised suddenly. You can't assume basically. You can't assume a single thing basically. So one of the person told that if that time basically he might have cleared the thing basically that are you basically coming tomorrow basically. If there he might have told this basically, then basically he might not have fired basically. That was told by one of the person basically. So you can't assume anything basically. Like this same way basically you can't assume like this. So that's why Bollywood groups always create the trigger basically, and they have connected with, they are basically connected with the satellite groups also. The reason is